A very special show about sacred spaces coming up right after this. During my years as a garden designer, I've enjoyed helping homeowners create private sanctuaries full of beauty and wonder. I find each garden to be a fresh opportunity to explore and create uniquely personal spaces. These are just a few of the gardens I've helped transform into garden homes. Hi, I'm Alan Smith. Welcome to The Garden Home, a show about design and blurring the lines between inside and out. Now, in today's show, we're going to focus on sacred places and sacred spaces. We're also going to take a look at how nature, landscapes, gardens, and individual plants have played a role in the past and continue to do so today. If you take a calendar and look across the months, you find that there are special occasions that punctuate it month after month. Certainly, this place, Arlington National Cemetery, would find Memorial Day as the most important day of the year for this sacred space. Since just after the Civil War, this place has provided comfort to literally millions of people who come here to honor the fallen, those who have served our country. Comfort comes in many ways here, through the dignified ceremonies that occur on a daily basis here at Arlington, as well as the enduring nature of this place. And then there's nature itself, how beautifully these grounds are maintained. Tom Sherlock, the historian for Arlington National Cemetery, tells us about the history of this place and the origins of Memorial Day.
Well, Arlington Cemetery currently is 624 acres, just about a square mile, but when the Lees lived here, it was double that. It was just over 1,100 acres. So about 2 square miles, extended all the way to the river and back to what is now Fort Myer, Virginia, and the area where the Iwo Jima Memorial is.
So it was an actual working plantation?
It was a working plantation. They farmed the land, did all the things necessary to sustain themselves and to sell goods.
Now there's a direct link to Arlington to Mount Vernon, isn't there?
There is. George Washington Parke Custis, an adopted son of General Washington. His mother, Martha, of course, married General Washington, and he adopted 2 children.
Now, Washington died in 1799, and it wasn't long after that his stepson started this project.
Yes, in 1803, George Washington Parke Custis began construction of the home. It took many years to build, as construction usually did back then. Certainly just a beautiful sight in the entire city of Washington, D.C. Just about anywhere where you are on the mall. You can turn around and look, to the west and see the home overlooking the town named after General Washington.
George Washington Parke Custis marries, and they have one daughter who in 1831 marries Robert E. Lee.
That began another whole connection of course, very storied families when you're joining now the Washington with the Lees. And these 2 families, not just socially, but militarily, were so important in the early formative years of our country.
Tom, how many of the fallen are interred here at Arlington?
At the present time, there are just over 330,000 former members of our military and their families buried here in the cemetery.
And it's an active, living place, if you will. I mean, it goes on every day.
We average about 30 funerals every day here. We're going to receive between 4.5 and 5 million visitors. And we're going to conduct literally thousands of commemorative events here. So although we have a long storied past, we add to that past every day.
The landscape here is so sublimely beautiful at every turn, and it's cared for with such loving hands.
The beauty of Arlington is paramount in how we honor our dead, and you take care of precious things, and the care and the work that goes into keeping this place beautiful, I think is unparalleled in Washington, D.C.
I think all of the graves certainly here are important at Arlington, but one that really stands out in my mind is the internment or the Kennedy Memorial for John F. Kennedy.
Absolutely. Without a doubt, the burial of President John F. Kennedy here in 1963 changed not only our history, but how we're perceived throughout the world more than any other singular event here in Arlington.
The tomb, the internment place, is near what is called the Arlington Oak.
Yes, it is. In fact, the Arlington Oak is a very central figure to the gravesite itself. As you walk up, there's symmetrical walkways that surround the oak, and very majestic tree. We all affix certain aspects when we look at large trees. I know that I do, and a large oak like that is one of strength. It's one of endurance.
And persevered.
And that oak there, I think is a personification of our psyche as a country at that time.
It's no surprise that the Tomb of the Unknown is probably the largest monument on this property.
It is. The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, of course, has come to represent all those who've died for our country. Not just those particular wars remembered here, but beyond that, all of them. And it's a place where someone can come and remember that sacrifice. And it's a place where someone can come and see their loved one honored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Of course, its design, its inscription, here rests in honor and glory, an American soldier known but to God. And that could speak to hundreds of thousands of people. It's on, looking onto the city of Washington, the beautiful flowers that come up in the spring and the summer, and the fact that we honor our lowest, or soldiers we don't even know who their rank are, with a vigil of every second speaks highly for how we view our military and how important it is to remember them.
It's truly inspiring.
A country can be judged on how it remembers its past. And certainly here at Arlington, we honor that past, and we honor the past and service of the American men and women who served in our armed forces. And each and every day we're reminded of that. And each and every day we're given the honor, we're given the privilege of representing our nation and giving them their final farewell. People will often ask me, is it depressing to work in a cemetery? No, it's not. This is a beautiful place. There's life here. You can feel it. It's the life of our country.
Once a year, hundreds of volunteers come out to Arlington National Cemetery for an event called Renewal and Remembrance, a national community service effort to beautify Arlington National Cemetery. You see, many professional landscapers and lawn care experts from all across the country donate their time out here planting, pruning, and grooming this sacred place. I had a chance to talk to Phil Fogarty about his association with Renewal and Remembrance. So Phil, what is Planet and what is its mission?
Well, Planet is the professional land care network. It's all those guys and gals you see running around your community, mowing lawns, trimming trees, planting, designing the green space we all enjoy. And we think of it as also something that helps everybody's quality of life. The mission of our group is to make sure that we can maintain and also create more green spaces all throughout America.
Phil, there's a lot going on here at Arlington today. How long have you been involved with Planet?
I've been involved with Planet my whole career, and about 14 years ago was when we first stopped by here and asked for permission to come out. And
where are you today in terms of participation some 14 years later?
That first year we had about 50 volunteers. This year we have about 500 and about 52 children here helping us out.
Well, so many people come together with such pride in their hearts to help make this an even more beautiful space.
The connection between how we live and how we feel and how we heal is perfectly set up here for us. People hit that front gate, and I don't know that they know why they're so drawn to this place. Talking before about how it's so perfectly green and manicured, and the green industry does that for everyone in their home communities, and we all do it around our homes to get that sense of order and sense of belonging to this place and our oneness with nature, and it's just a perfect mecca for that right here. We developed the kids program as a way for us to, I guess, feel like we're helping the next generation take the torch. When we show the kids what's involved here and what they're witnessing and have them at a wreath laying and do a planting here that they can come back years from now with their children and say, we planted this and this is why we planted it, is because of all that's going on here at Arlington.
While visiting Washington, D.C. and lending a hand at Arlington National Cemetery for the Renewal and Remembrance, I was also able to visit George Washington's Mount Vernon Estate and Gardens. My friend Dean Norton gave me an interesting history lesson about this monumental place. Dean, what a crowd. I mean, this is really encouraging, if not inspiring, to see so many people out today to see Mount Vernon.
Yeah, this is exciting. You know, what these people don't realize, the gate receipts that we get on a daily basis helps us preserve and protect George Washington's home. So it is wonderful to see these people here on this nice summer day.
What was the size of this place when Washington, I assume it was his brother's estate initially?
Right, Lawrence Washington, and then he leased it for a while, and then in 1759 actually inherited it. Near the end of his life, he had 8,000 acres. 3,620 of that was under cultivation. Where we are today is the original mansion house farm, so not a lot of active farming took place here. This is where all the experimentation and planning went on. All those that would have come and visited George and Martha Washington would have come here. Well, the vegetable gardens certainly help feed all those people coming by, over 700 in 1798. The pleasure garden for people to just walk, stroll, and enjoy. The bowling green to maybe participate in a game of bowling. Well, Washington was trying to emulate some of the fine old homesteads in England.
He had taken advantage of what I think is the most natural feature here, the Potomac.
Right, I mean, what an incredible view across the East Lawn to the Potomac River and the shoreline beyond. Of course, he didn't own any of that land over there, but he could certainly say, look at my view, and what a view it is.
Now, this whole idea of creating a sense of expansiveness was accomplished by many things. I mean, he was a surveyor. That was his first career, if you will.
He was a surveyor, so he had a good idea of the lines and the spatial, how things should be divided in a proper space in the units. And then, of course, also he read a lot of books as far as landscape design. And so that's what you see today at Mount Vernon is what came out of his research, his writing, his reading. And so what you have today is a transitional landscape. It's not quite naturalistic, but it's a transitional landscape between the formal and the naturalistic.
Now, Washington was, he loved farming,
Right.
and he also loved trees, and it's evidenced in many places, but certainly here on the Bowling Green.
Correct. He returned home from the Revolutionary War, Christmas Eve, 1783, and 1 year was spent riding his western properties to check on those, but January 9th, 1785, he's riding his farms and his forests looking for trees to redo his landscape at Mount Vernon. So he's looking for ash, elm, hickory, maple, all these sorts of trees, and within and around this bowling green, he planted around 596 trees and shrubs.
He would have to be proud today to see that several of them that you see here were planted, I guess, under his direction.
Yeah, a couple of the tulip poplars that he planted may have been 10 feet, but now they're 145 feet tall and just magnificent specimens.
How did they get to this great age, given the fact that there's all sorts of climatic conditions that can cause them to die, as well as lightning and so forth?
Well, a couple things. One, the trees that he happened to find in the forest, he just found trees with good genetics. So they were strong trees to start with, and then they have been cared for since Washington's day. They would have been watered during that time, pruned, and of course the care of Mount Vernon Estate when George and Martha died just continued on right up until today.
So Dean, what about the lightning rods? I can tell that there are cables that run down some of the trees. When were those installed?
Well, you know, the Ladies Association always tried to bring the best of the best to help them with whatever they were doing here on the estate, and they brought on a renowned tree specialist that encouraged them through the help of Thomas Edison, believe it or not, to put the lightning cables on these trees. And so all of the taller trees have lightning rods going up to the very tops of the trees. And if there's one thing the arborists did almost nearly 100 years ago to save these taller trees, it was the installation of the lightning rods.
Well, you know, this was a popular place to visit in Washington's time. What are some of the accounts of visitors?
Well, we have records of over 700 people stopping by in 1798, and those were overnight guests.
700?
700. They knew they had a good thing, and they stayed on for sometimes a long time.
And where are we in terms of visitation today at Mount Vernon?
Right now, for the last couple of years, and we hope again this year, we're over 1 million people a year, which is just incredibly exciting.
That is excellent. Well, keep up the good work.
Alan, thank you very much.
Thank you. Ever since I was a little kid, I was fascinated by George Washington, and the more I learned about him, the more I became interested in Mount Vernon itself, his country estate on the banks of the Potomac. What a beautiful place. And as I became interested in architectural and garden history, I learned interesting things about how buildings were built. So I want to just take a moment and talk about the finish here on Mount Vernon. It's called rustication. And what George Washington wanted to do was to take his timber house, these blocks are actually wood blocks, and make the house appear as though it was a masonry house. So with these blocks of wood, they were painted, and then a light sand was applied to them. And so it really does give you the sense that this building is built of sandstone. So the principal colors here at Mount Vernon are white. The body of the building is this beautiful sort of creamy white, the color of stone. And then you have the red roof, very iconic. George Washington loved the red roofs, and you can see it across views throughout the estate, which direct you back to the main house. And then Of course, there's the color green, the color of the shutters, and it's also the color we find on the loggia. And one of the most beautiful marriages between the house and the garden here is where George Washington instructed that panel to be painted green on the loggia, and then he trained the Lonicera sempervirens, the native honeysuckle, the scarlet honeysuckle, up the post and onto that fan shape between the arches. And so you had this mirror, or this echo of the color of the roof and the bloom. Now at the Garden Home Retreat, we did a similar thing, but on a much more modest scale. You know the house is brick. It was just made of ordinary brick, the sorts of bricks that would have been made on any farm in the 19th or 18th century. And so what we did is to give it a sense of unity, to make it look like the materials are actually finer than they are. We did a lime wash on it with that really pale butter yellow. So there we used a faux finish as well to sort of project and give a certain feeling, just as you see here at Mount Vernon. Now, before I embarked on my trip to the nation's capital, I got creative and cooked this mouth-watering rosemary chicken recipe in the summer kitchen at the Garden Home. It's very simple and absolutely delicious. Now I want to show you one of my favorite recipes. The reason it's a favorite is that it's so simple and it makes great use of rosemary. Now I'm just taking this 3-pound chicken and I'm pulling its wings back and tucking them in like that. It just makes for a prettier presentation. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just cutting the back side here, the skin, just making a cut where I can tuck a leg in like this, and then I'm going to fold this other leg up under it like this. All right, now we've got a nice compact little package here. The rest is very simple. Rosemary and lemon will be the key ingredients. But I'm going to take 2 quarter pieces of lemon and rub it on the bird, and then I'm going to take and stuff that lemon rind up in the bird, and the other one, making sure that I'm completely soaking it down with the lemon, and I'm going to tuck that quarter up, and then I've got 2 that are not going to be squeezed that I put up in the bird. Now this will help preserve moisture on the inside of it. All right, now with that in place, what we're going to do is take this rosemary, and I like to use about 6 or 7 stems of it. I fold them and I tuck this up inside the bird as well. So it's fully stuffed with this lovely fresh rosemary. Okay, now for the top of the bird, or the crust, what I like to do is take just a little bit of olive oil, rub it over it like this, take a little salt, a little cracked pepper, and then some rosemary to go on the bird like this. Okay, that's about, it's finely chopped, about a teaspoon. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? All right, now I'm going to place the bird in a baking pan. I've preheated the oven to 350. Now I've got a pound of potatoes here, and what I'm going to do is take the rest of the olive oil, started with half a cup, I'll pour the olive oil all over the potatoes. I'm going to add a small white onion. You can use as much onion as you like, the more the better as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to add some salt, about a generous teaspoon of salt. And I'm taking the rest of that lovely rosemary and I'm sprinkling it all over it. Mixing this together. And then laying the potatoes all around the bird. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to cook this for about 2 hours. Check on it. And what will happen is the juices of the chicken will conspire with the flavors of these potatoes and rosemary, and you will have a wonderful meal. You want to cook this until the juice that's coming out of the chicken runs clear. Now, wasn't that simple? A great use for fresh rosemary from the garden. Welcome to the Design Studio. This is one of my favorite places to spend time looking at photographs and images that you, the viewer, send to me, and we talk about some possibilities on how to improve the landscape. Well, today we're taking a look at a beautiful house in Colorado. Now, what is interesting about this house is that it's very bold, and Susan wrote in, who's the owner, and said that she would really like to have drought-tolerant plants, which is a good thing, because I think that water shortage is something we should all think about, but particularly in Colorado. Now, what I'd like to propose here is to do something very simple but bold, because that's really the nature of the house. I really like this tree a lot. And I think that repeating this tree over here, if you will, one here, and maybe even one, I'm not sure what variety this is because I can't quite tell. This looks like a maple. But Susan, if you just sort of think about another one here, and then maybe another one over here to sort of frame the house, whatever this is. So we're going to repeat that. But I want to talk to you about this basic landscape around the front of the house. I think if you did some sort of sweeping bed that might come around, I can't tell how the front works or where the connection is, but I'm assuming that you could come around the front here and all along here. Now, you did indicate that you'd like to do a rose garden over there. We'll talk about that in a moment. But if you divided this into blocks and you said, all right, let's do something here, something here, something here, something here, you can see that you're creating this rhythm and maybe something there. And then, what if these were just grasses? A mass planting of grass A, and then we come back with grass B, and grass B. So you have two varieties of grasses across. They're all very bold. These could be a certain form of juniper. There's so many different types of junipers. These could be junipers that will take very, very dry conditions. Likewise here and here. And you mentioned you had some burning bush that you could move. And I think adding some of those burning bush to the back, like here, and maybe accenting the house here, and then repeat it maybe right at the base there. So you would have just this bit of burning bush to shine. And then maybe make a hedge over here of burning bush. Would be very natural. And on the other side of that, that's where you could have your roses. Now remember, we talked about repeating this tree here and then over here. So you can kind of begin to see how this would work, the pattern, and we've set a pattern here, here, and here, and here, here, and then the blue, blue, blue with two different types of grasses. Now, you can check and see what grasses do the best in your area by going to one of your local independent garden centers. We've done a lot of work in Colorado at the botanical garden there, and it's a great place to go and get ideas. Now, Susan, I hope that helps. You've got a beautiful house, and I think all it needs is some really bold, simple landscaping. Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Until next time, from the Garden Home, I'm Alan Smith. More information about today's topic and other topics covered in this series can be found at plansmith.com.